In this video, I'm going to look at some of the challenges that a startup face and what we have to offer. So if you are a startup, then you are probably starting with a small team. You have the constraint of resources, of finances, of timings, of all all of the issues that's dragging you down and giving a challenge to the big league. But as a startup, what you have with you have a freedom to try new ideas which the big players sometimes don't because they are more bureaucratic. You can work on arbitrages which the big players still ignore. You can work on some automation. Some would call these automation high risk and high reward games that probably the big players are not interested in trying. You can reduce your dependency on humans, add a added risk into your system. You have to also cut down your cost drastically because you cannot afford a lot of cost during those initial phases. And finally, the most important part here is that you need to be multi-skilled and you need to train your people to be multi-skilled. So while you are doing some or the other thing in startup, you have multiple roles. So how can we help you to uh, resolve a lot of these problems that you face while you start with your new business or new idea? So there are some costs which you cannot see in the starting, which comes to you. These are like undocumented or the hidden costs that would bring down your valuation drastically at some time. So the trouble with going on and going and using the same ways as the big player does or the industry norm or the conventions is that those methods are poorly understood, and if it's a financial valuation kind of a startup or any startup that requires to play around with a little bit of data, you might be using Excel and you might be using it in Excel in a very old way. So that would slow down a lot of things. You will have some calculation would be slow, maybe a lot of manual process involved to calculate and get to the final numbers. The model that you build in Excel or Word or PowerPoint are not scalable because in general scalability is a big issue in Microsoft Word and Excel or all those data, or if you have a website that you build and you want to link it, and if you want to get somebody to work on your website and Android software, it becomes very hard at the initial phases. Sometimes there is increased requirement and pressure on reporting and auditing, again which will require a play with data. So in all such cases, the solutions that a very innovative company would do would be something related to SQL, R and LaTeX. These are the three most important open source and they are free, so these things don't add a burden to your company. Now, you might use some of the new softwares to do that from software vendor and might not use the open source just by believing that these software would do a good jobs, but sometimes they don't. So the most important part for your venture becomes creating multi-skilled labor force which can work a little bit with these softwares and can play around with automation so that you get a lot of time to actually build up your idea, and you save your time in Excel, you save your time in Word, you save your time in data handling, you save your time in website. If you want to launch a small app, you save a lot of time on your app. So when you use Excel, it's inherently not so reliable. It crashes all the time. And if you have a lot of data, then it becomes more trouble for you. If you use a Word, it hangs all the time. You cannot automate a lot of stuff, although you can use a little bit VBA. But VBA should be very carefully used with Excel, and we bring expertise on how to use the VBA and which things you should not use the VBA in Excel. So there is the best practice somewhere in between based on our experience that this thing is probably good in VBA, this thing is probably good in Excel, and how to arrange those kind of stuff. In Word, you would rather use LaTeX, which is an open source, to automate a lot of your reports. Just imagine you are building those reports again and again in the Word and you're copying things here and there, opening many Word screens, and sometimes it's not responding, it's hanging. So you can use the open source software LaTeX, and that would reduce those time of hours for a multi-skilled guy or an important resource who is a part of your startup, and maybe give him more time to think on the real things. Again, on the website, your website might be uh, expensive at the first time, and you might be missing on a lot of things. So how about a website where we can train your resource and he can edit your website as and when required, rather than going back and forth with the web development company? So it's about creating a multi-skill, a 360-degree skill in your labor force, which can help address issues related to SQL, R, LaTeX, whether it's WordPress website, or whether is it some other things that's pulling you down because you are just not able to carry the weight of all these regulatory or reporting stuff, and you cannot just focus on your business. So if you are facing a trouble in scaling up the things, then I suggest you should get in touch with us and understand how we could be of some use. I thank you for